everybody, Jamie Daggers here. I'm a full-time professional mini painter and streamer, and now a YouTuber. And today we are going to be talking about Wonderland's War.
Hey everyone, Jamie Daggers.
Yeah, right.
Bisexual
Just
finger
like
guns.
Buddy Christ fingers. This is part 3 in a series that I've been producing here, covering how to paint the minis in this wonderful game full of tons of really awesome looking minis. And I wanted to make this series in an attempt to introduce more people to my favorite hobby, which is miniature painting, and provide a more easy to follow and approachable method to taking your first step into the world of painting a board game. The goal is to keep it simple and approachable and also inexpensive, because it can be a very expensive hobby and we want to save you money that you can spend on more board games. So my approach uses very few colors, it uses very few steps, but it's still comprehensive enough to make these items look really good and very unique, so that your end product is uniquely yours and it looks different than anyone else's Wonderland's War. So in the past 2 videos, we have been discussing very detailed step-by-step instructions on how to paint various minis in this game, including the Jabberwock and the castles. This time, I thought we would cover the first player token. Now, it seems strange to do this as my third one, because I am going to make the argument that if you paint nothing else in this game, painting the first player token can be a really, really great place to start and stop, because it's something that everyone is going to use every single game, and customizing this the way you want to and never touching another mini in the box can still give a lot of character to this game that may not be there with the unpainted mini. So not only is it a much more approachable step into mini painting, but it can also be a stopping point for you. You can just paint this first player token, not touch any of the other minis, and play with it as many times as you want. So my thought process in going from very detailed painting of the individual miniatures to simply painting the first player token is that you can have just that piece customized and it won't look out of place compared to the rest of the minis in the box. It's a single player token that everybody else is going to be using and getting passed around the table, and if that is the trophy piece of your collection, then nothing else being painted is not going to look that strange. If, let's say, you have seen my other videos and you feel a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of painting that there is to do, you say you open the box, you see all the castles in there and how many you may need to paint, and you start to get a little overwhelmed, I think this piece is the perfect thing to paint if nothing else in this box. So it's a great start and end point if need be, because you can just paint that and stop there and nothing will look any different. It will look like a custom piece that you poured your heart into, and then there's no obligation to keep going if you find that this isn't for you. So for our first step, I will be using Dragon Ash Gray to paint the stone at the bottom of the pedestal. Keeping in mind to stay away from other characteristics of the model, I'm going to paint all the way up to this small root that is growing up at the halfway point of the sword, deliberately avoiding the base of the mushrooms, which we will come back to later, trying to keep clean lines and edges as we go up the sword all the way to that root. For the next step, I'm going to use Diesel Blue from Cuttlefish Colors to paint this small exposed bit of blade that is showing underneath the crossguard, in between that and the rock itself. This is a bit of a tricky area to get, so do take your time and be careful not to paint over something you've already painted. And once that's dry, I'm going to take some of this titanium white from Pro Acryl and mix it about 50-50 with the Diesel Blue, and just paint the very edges of the sword to give it a metallic look. For our next step, we're going to be grabbing Blood Clot...
Hello.
Editing. For our next step, we're going to be grabbing Blood Clot Red from Cuttlefish Colors. With this, we're going to be painting the heart, the gem on the pommel, and the grip of the sword itself, as well as the mushroom caps. So taking the Blood Clot Red, we're going to very carefully paint the tops of these mushrooms, paying special attention to avoid the rock that we've already painted, the root, and going on to the underside of the mushrooms. From there, we're going to go up to the heart in the center of the sword, just underneath the crossguard, and we're going to add that Blood Clot Red to that area too, again paying special attention not to hit any of the spots that we have already painted. The same approach can be taken for the gem. If you've already painted over this with your warm brown or golden brown step, you should be able to just put the Blood Clot Red right over top. We can rely on the opacity of the paint to cover any mistakes that we've made before. And the same thing goes for other areas of the sword. If you find that you've overpainted onto other things, just wait for it to dry, go back with the original color, and just clean it up really quick. For this next step, I'll be using warm brown from Pro Acryl, and we'll be using it on a couple different parts of the sword. We're also going to be using it for the base of the mushrooms and the underside of the caps. The final place we'll be using this warm brown is on the root that is crawling its way up the sword. So we'll apply the warm brown to the underside of the mushrooms, paying close attention to not get it around onto the upper parts of the caps, and then of course the stems of the mushrooms themselves. Again, focus on keeping your edges clean, avoid painting onto other parts that have already been painted or are yet to be painted, and just take your time. We're also going to move over to the root that's climbing up the sword here, and we're going to paint brown onto that as well. If you need to, use the side of your brush to catch the raised edges of the root. It'll make it a little bit easier to just target the root itself and not paint anything around it. And finally, with the warm brown, we're going to be painting the crossguard of the sword and the small piece underneath it with this little curly Q on there, and then the pommel at the very top. In this case, it's okay if you paint over the small gem in the center, because we will be going back and painting that later with a different opaque color. We're going to take that blood clot red and we're going to mix in a very little bit of diesel blue. If you find that this isn't bright enough, you can always add a tiny bit of titanium white just to brighten it up a little bit. And we're going to use this on the grip of the sword itself. What you'll find is you'll end up with a bit of a purple that's going to stand out from any other color that we've put onto this model. But by virtue of being made up of the same colors that we've used, it's not going to be a sore thumb on the rest of the model. It's in the same family of colors, so it's going to read very similarly, but unique enough because it's the only place we're going to be using this color. The next step is going to be adding golden brown from Pro Acryl to almost all of the areas that we've already painted with the warm brown. Paying special attention to hit the most raised areas of these features is going to be important. Allowing some of that warm brown to show through is part of the plan here, so you don't need to go full coverage on this. Like we did with the root, it is helpful to use the edge of your brush to hit the raised areas of these features in order to keep some of that brown present, but still get some of that golden brown color on there. Again, this will add a bit of a metallic effect to the whole thing, and if you want to go the extra mile, mix a little bit of that titanium white in with this golden brown color, and do the same thing again, but in a much smaller area. When you're thinking of highlights, imagine a pyramid. If the warm brown is the foundation of our pyramid, it's going to cover a lot more area than the next step up, which will be our golden brown. So covering a smaller area and allowing some of that warm brown to show through is the key here. And furthermore, when you add white to the golden brown to brighten it up even further, that's going to be the pinnacle of our pyramid, and therefore will cover even less space than before. We're going to use the same process to paint the pommel. Again, ignore the gem in the center for now. If you paint over it, that is totally fine, but you don't have to be too clean with it. The next step for the stones is going to be mixing a little bit of that titanium white with the dragon ash gray, and we're going to be paying close attention to the edges and the cracks of the stone, painting small lines along those edges and cracks to give it a stone-like appearance that the gray simply just doesn't pull out by itself. I started a little bit early today. We painted this first player token from Wonderland's War. And that was the plan, and we did it. We got it done. We did it. You got your Hulk. Oh, the Hulkbuster mini is so cool looking.
All right, one big clap. Yeah, we're synced.
So again, using very simple methods, very minimal colors, mixing some colors to get what we want out of them, we now have a beautifully painted first player token. If this is the only thing you end up painting in this kit, it's not going to stand out because it is a piece that's used universally. Everyone's going to get to move it around, everyone's going to get to play with it. It doesn't belong to any one person, and that's the beauty of it. If you found it difficult during the process, I was going to say it.
Take a shot.
If at any point you found this a little too difficult, just take a deep breath and try it again. Remember, it's just paint. You can always paint over it. And if any one step was particularly difficult, just get it as best you can. If you overlap colors in certain places, it's not going to look that much out of place once the whole thing is done. So it's better to complete it than to perfect it. If you found during this process that you really love what you did, then you're in luck. because not only do I have other videos here on this channel, but I also stream on Twitch from Tuesday to Friday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where we're painting all sorts of minis, doing all sorts of challenges, and learning together as we all become better mini painters. I also have content over on TikTok and Instagram where you can see other work that I've done and silly videos that I make. And I hope that through this whole process of painting, you have found something to enjoy, maybe something meditative or something to turn your brain off at the end of a long workday. I find that painting really helps me decompress and relax a little bit, and throwing on maybe an audiobook or a TV show I've seen 100 times is a really great way to just check out and really dive into something. It doesn't matter if you think of yourself as an artistic person or not. You'll find that this is more like a 3D coloring book than anything else. So once you start to know what colors to choose, where to apply them, and how, you'll really start to see this whole thing unlock itself before you, and really find your way into this mini painting world that I love so much. Thank you again so much for joining us for the process. If this is your first time painting, I would love to hear about it in the comments. If it's not, I would also love to hear about it. Share with me below if this is your first time or your 100th time painting. I want to know what your favorite thing is to paint, what your favorite paints are. Let's talk about it. If you're interested in learning more, I do one-on-one group classes and even office hour instruction via my Patreon, which can be found in the thingy? What is that called?
Doobly-doo?
The doobly-doo? I heard so many people call it.
Section?
The about, the video details.
The description.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, we're old.
I know. I also have group classes and office hours via my Patreon. And at the top tier, we also have one-on-one instruction. If you find that you need more specific instruction, that is also an option over there. And you can even find me at conventions throughout the year where I'll be teaching live and in person. Far more detailed work than this. So if you find that you really loved what you did today, seek me out. I'd be happy to help you. I'd be happy to give you some more tips and pointers, especially on my group classes. Those are very well loved by most of my community and a very accessible price for anyone who wants to join the Patreon. We also have a wonderful Discord full of really talented artists of all kinds, not just mini painters, where I would invite you to come along, join the discussions, share your art, and let's have some fun together. We even do movie nights and game nights together. All sorts of awesome community to be had over there, and I want you to be a part of it. Whether you're looking for my socials, my Patreon, or other ways to connect with me, you can find them all down in the video description. I really appreciate you spending this time with me today, watching this video. I hope you feel a little bit more empowered to pick up a brush and start painting these minis, and really find the joy in mini painting just like I do. There are so many other wonderful people in this community that have talents beyond measure, and I encourage you to explore and look at their videos. Some people I am fortunate enough to call friends in this space that make wonderful content. I've also linked a few of those people down below that I would recommend you seek out. Good reason to shout out my friends. Why not?
If you shout them out, I can take a headshot of them and Photoshop onto Friends, the show, and just be like, boom! Just like 3 frames, have that on image, and like...
That would be really funny. I would actually really like that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for joining me today.
Just take it from the top.
I froze. Yeah. Thank you again for joining me. I'm Jamie Daggers, and don't forget, if you can't trust yourself, trust the process. There you go. That's a painted sword, baby.
And there it is.
That's how you do it.
That's the way we do it. This is how we do it.
That's right.